just want to thank everybody for joining us today. This is an exciting topic and definitely one that has got a lot of interest across the globe, as you can see. Welcome to the start of our webinar series, and we'll be bringing them to you on a regular basis over the coming months, and we'll keep you up to date with that. As we go through today, at the end of today's webinar, we will answer any questions that you have in the Q&A box. So see if you can find the Q&A box down the bottom of your screen. You can type in any questions there that you would like us to address about your business, and we'll get to those at the end. And we're happy to stay on longer for any of you who have questions that you really would like to talk about. So whilst we'll keep this to the hour and have the webinar wrapped up, anyone who wants to stay longer, you're more than welcome to stay and join us. Let's get started perhaps. So I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Karen Jensen, CEO of Conductor Software. Conductor Software was born back in 2019 after the coming together of three very different minds who each in their own way had been working to solve one of the biggest puzzles that we have. Is why do we continue to survey but we don't get the gains that we are promised? And this is affecting the way that organizations are performing, and it's affecting the way that people feel in their environment and also their well-being. We knew we could do better. We each understood, we each had a key piece to that. We understood that what was needed, and just so happened a very synchronous event that brought us all together, and we realized that we each had a part of that. And we brought together Conductor Software. So those three founders were myself, Alex Glassy, who will be presenting, and Linda Ray, who is CEO of Neurocapability, which is where I used to be working and where we learned so much about what's really happening with people in the workplace and what it is we need to be focusing on if we really want to get gains and to start to improve performance. So excited to start presenting, to start sharing all of this with you today and in the future. We're going to start with a poll just so that we'll have polls throughout the webinars. And so Lou, if you want to bring up the first poll, and then this is a bit of a practice, just add in your response here. Is increasing support from employees a priority in your organization or the organizations that you work with? So you might be a consultant who's working with clients. Is this important? So just add your response in there, and Lou, when those start coming through, maybe you might want to share some of those results and we can.
Yeah, absolutely. We're getting almost there, so we'll give everybody another 20 seconds to finish up the poll here. It's looking like overwhelmingly there is a yes. 80% have voted yes so far. So people are looking to increase support for employees, absolutely. There's a few no's, a few I don't knows. And again, we've got a few more people trickling in, so we'll just give them another couple seconds here to finish this poll.
Yep, and if you're just new into the webinar, we are just doing a quick poll for people to let us know. Is increasing support for employees a priority for your organization or the organizations that you're working with? And it's really, I must say, it's really exciting to know that this is a priority given what we've all been through for the past 12 months. I must say what we're seeing is that it really is very much an explicit priority for most organizations right now, understanding how important this is.
All right, so that's just about it. So I'll end the poll. Okay. Give everybody 5 more seconds if there's any stragglers.
So just while we're, do you have an update on the responses for that, Lou?
Yeah, so we'll end it right here. And then, so we've got, I'll share the results with everybody. So wow. 75% are yes, 5% no, and then 11%, or sorry, 8% no, and then 17% are I don't know.
Yep, awesome, terrific. Good news, good news. So I'm going to now, let's get the webinar started. We know we're all on the clock. So I'd like to introduce our Conductors co-founder and our Chief Innovation Officer, Alex Glassy. Alex is he speaks and writes on leadership. He is a strategy guru. I've spent many years helping organizations to understand the importance of bringing in the right strategy, but his focus was very much an understanding that strategy was of no use because it missed out on this people piece. And this was absolutely fundamental for an organization to be able to actually drive any strategy through their organization. So without any further ado, I'll hand it over to you, Alex.
Oh, thanks, Karen. And thanks to everyone who's here. We're so excited about 2021 as we get to take a lot of the things that we've been working on and learning over the last couple of years and sharing it now with absolutely everybody. So we're delighted to have you here and look forward to seeing you in another 4 weeks. We'll be doing another one of these on a slightly different topic. So do circle April the 7th or 8th, depending on which side of the world you're in. And we'll see you here again. By the way, I want to let you know that we're going to be showing a lot of research. It's kind of going to be a little bit geeky today, not too geeky, but a little bit geeky. We'll be sharing a lot of research. So I'll just be showing like quotes and side from various papers and articles and that type of thing. If you're interested in getting the links to those things, just type the word research into the comments and into the chat, and then we'll send you out kind of an email that's got links to the various papers that we've been working on, just so you can double check and do your own independent research. Fascinating stuff this is, I must say. All right, let me make sure if I can get my slides going. There we go. So the agenda, really crisp and clean. We're going to start off by just saying engagement is dead. We'll talk about that. And then some of you may or may not know where we're going, but psychological safety, which underpins engagement, is fundamental to understanding and motivating people. So we'll talk about that and how they're related, how engagement and psych safety are related. And then we want to give you as a kind of a new model of the workplace that is just starting to appear in the literature and in the research and what we've seen in our own research using our tools. So do we really mean that engagement is dead? Yeah, we mean that engagement is dead. And in specifically that as a tool for CEOs and senior executives to deliberately and predictably make decisions that look after people and improve performance. Engagement has just simply not done the work that we all hoped that it would, and we know that because we really want our CEOs to be able to say this. I love the ROI we're getting from our engagement related investments. We should significantly increase the budget. I do a lot of work with CEOs. I've never heard one say this. If you want to put it in the chat, what have you heard from your CEO? If you're a consultant, you'll have several clients. What are your clients, senior people, saying about engagement? Is there a general sense of frustration? As I say, we're seeing this all the time. In order for a CEO to be able to say this, what they would need to be able to do is have a real clear definition about what engagement is. It would have to be measurable. We would have to know that it actually impacts performance, to be able to show that. You'd want to know that you could actually make a change to engagement, that engagement itself can be influenced. And then again, in order for us to have a discussion about return on investment, we would have to know that it could be discussed in financial terms. So this is what we're going to use this checklist throughout this session. And the reason that we want to use this checklist, and in particular the bottom part, can we be discussed in financial terms, is because the decisions with regard to investments are made, at the in the boardrooms. And when you're in the boardroom, it's sometimes much easier to do things like, add a new location, for example. Your head of operations will say, we've got 10 locations. And if we add an 11th location, we know that that will increase revenue by 10%. That's an easy one. Or, again, someone in operations saying, well, we invest in that particular machinery. We know that it's going to make us more efficient or higher quality or allow us to do more with what we've already got. So it's in order for us to be able to say, yeah, but we need to invest in people, we need to be able to make it as easy for a decision to be made, and that is, what is the ROI? If we spend $1, we're going to get $2 back. So we need to come to the table prepared with numbers that bolster our case. The trouble is that over the course of the last 5 to 10 years, there's been a host, thousands of articles have been written about engagement, and here's a sampling of some of them. HR Mag 2014, there was almost no evidence that any measures of engagement are valid or reliable. We just simply can't measure it. Another larger study, which was in 2019 from HBR, started off saying this: our research suggests that 1/3 of teams that appeared to be engaged, both in surveys and in the eyes of management, exhibited deeper signs of disengagement, such as antipathy towards colleagues and dishonesty to managers. So again, more evidence that the tools that we're using to measure engagement are actually not reliable. Here's another one. Employers spend hundreds of millions of dollars on engagement programs, yet their scores remain abysmally low. Harvard Business Review 2017. So we're trying to look for the ROI. We're spending hundreds of millions of dollars. We're throwing money at the problem, but we still have this very low sense of satisfaction. And the study that, and you'll love to read this one, it's not too long, but 15 pages, but Bailey and partners in 2015 did what they call a narrative review. So they looked at 5,771 documents, and then they synthesized them all. They all brought them together. And first of all, they found that only 3% of those documents met the quality threshold for good research. So lots of hype, 97% of those documents and surveys and research papers just simply not meeting the basic quality standards. And then what was left, they found that there were 9 validated scales. So 9 different survey instruments that were being used to measure engagement. And there were 6 specific definitions of engagement, and quote, they are in effect different phenomena. In other words, you use the word engagement to mean this, Karen uses the word engagement to mean that, Lewis something else, and me something else, right? So very little commonality in just the ultimately meaning of this. In conclusion, they said, we do not really know what, and we, meaning the world, we do not really know what engagement means. We do not know how to measure it. We do not know what its outcomes are, in other words, what it delivers, and we do not know how to make changes to engagement, what drives up levels of engagement. And so if we go back to our checklist, what we're seeing is it's not well defined, doesn't appear to be measurable, doesn't appear to impact performance, doesn't appear to be influenced, and it makes it very difficult to be discussed in financial terms if we don't have those other things. And so engagement strikes us as this, just simply not fit for purpose. There's no way that a CEO understanding, this type of comment on it would actually be able to use or spend a significant amount of money. And I was reminded of this just yesterday. I mean, I have conversations like this. We all have conversations like this with a CEO team, a CEO, and the head of people in a large international organization. And they were talking about engagement. They said, yeah, we did an engagement survey in November of 2019. It took 2 hours for people the staff to complete. And we didn't really do a whole lot with it whatsoever. And that's why we just simply haven't done anything since. So, I mean, tell us use the chat if you like. And, have you experienced this type of thing? either the length of them, they're pretty weighty, they're pretty cumbersome. I think what's happening is because they're tough to measure things, we try to cover the waterfront, really trying to understand what's going on. Ultimately, the weight of some of these documents makes them very difficult to be actionable, and that's a problem. So there's the opening thesis, engagement is dead, but engagement's been around for quite a while, and it does actually tell us things. It leads us to something, and but it also shows us by what it doesn't do, what we might want to take a look at. So for example, engagement looks at individuals, very much so. It's trying to take a look at something that is experienced by individuals, their enthusiasm or their dedication to work, that type of thing, depending on the definition. But what we do know is that, and in the literature and engagement in the last just couple of years, 2-3 years, you're starting to see this sense that engagement is contagious. So one individual feels more engaged, that then people beside them working with them could actually start to feel more engaged, and vice versa. If I feel low engagement, that might pull down someone else's enthusiasm about what's going on. So this sense of this kind of social interaction, the phrase collective engagement is used, the sense that teams are rising and falling together, and that managers of a team have an outsized influence on that team's engagement. So this sense of engagement being, or people feeling this individual sense rather than feeling a collective social sense in a social context, has started to emerge from the recent papers. Engagement measures something extrinsic or outside of us. It measures enthusiasm or our dedication or our focus, these things that are outside of us. And what we know now over the research over the last kind of 22 years on psychological safety is that what really drives people is this intrinsic stuff, things like trust, how I feel, how I'm treated. Those intrinsic senses are really what starts to drive people's behavior in the workplace. And in Kahn, one of the papers that I'll refer to you, Kahn in 1990, in talking about engagement, actually presaged this and said, listen, but one of the things that we need to have in order to have any kind of engagement, we need to have psychological safety. And then the final thing is, who benefits from this? And if we take a look at a definition of employee engagement, what we'll see is that the organization is designed to benefit. So employee engagement, the degree to which an employee is absorbed by and enthusiastic about their work so that they take positive action to further the organization's reputation and interests. And so you can see here the individual and employee, the extrinsic stuff, enthusiastic, absorbed by their work, and then in order for the organization to benefit. And when we have this kind of thing, there's no sense of reciprocity. People in the workplace know that the reason you're giving us pizza, or the reason you're doing whatever you're trying to do to motivate my enthusiasm, isn't for me. It's actually you're doing it for the organization and that type of thing. And so that actually breeds a little bit of cynicism inside an organization. The definition of psychological safety, as advanced by Amy Edmondson in 1999, is the degree to which an individual feels safe to speak up or speak out without fear of being hurt, embarrassed, or criticized. So the definition still says an individual, but clearly it's in the social context of I feel safe to speak up to others, speak out to others without fear of being hurt, embarrassed, or criticized by others. And so you can see the social context, you can see this intrinsic internal feelings that are vital to how I kind of feel about myself and everything around me. And clearly, there's nothing in there about the organization whatsoever. It's all about the employee. All right. I think what we'll do is I'd like to ask Karen to add a couple of words on psych safety and its definition.
Thanks, Alex. So on the work that we were doing over at Neurocapability, and we've been doing that for over 10 years, and Linda continues to lead the space there. What we were looking at and what we understood, so Neurocapability has the world's only accredited program in neuroscience and leadership. So we'd been teaching leaders for well over a decade how to create these environments that would help people to perform better by understanding the triggers that were happening in their environment and happening to them. And this speaks to this piece here of which Amy talks about, where the individual feels safe to speak up or speak out. And Khan also spoke about that in 1990 in his work, and defined it as feeling able to show and employ oneself without fear of negative consequences. So what we developed and what is the leading component of Conductor's platform is really getting down to understand where this fear is coming from. And we know from the research that this is linked to the 5 social domains where we experience threat and reward. So these are absolutely critical for really understanding, getting down to the root cause. And I can see through some of the chat, people talking about, this behavior is, what interferes with engagement, and it is contagious. So if we can understand what that root cause is, because that's what leads to the behavior, then you know exactly what it is that you need to be working on. So these 5 social domains, of which they are well thought out, they're well defined in the literature, they're well understood, and there's deep research around each of these. So there's so much research that backs this up, and once again, we can share that with you. So certainty. The brain's a prediction machine. It's always trying to work out what's going to happen into the future. So certainty is critical for a lot of people. Do I have clarity or understanding of what is going to happen in this environment? What am I meant to be doing? For autonomy, am I autonomous? Do I have the right to be able to make choices on how I do my work? If that's important for you, and that's not, you're not addressing that within your workplace, it creates a threat response. And this is how it actually starts to then impact the behavior. Relatedness. Am I connected to the people around me? So for some people, that's extremely important. They need to know they're part of a group, that they belong to the group, and they have a place in that group, and that they're respected and trusted. Equity, are things fair? Do things feel, people having the same opportunities? Are we all treated the same? Are our policies, our practices, are fair for all of us? Are others getting better work than what I'm getting? That can be a trigger for threat in teams. And significance. Do I matter to my team? This is really important for a lot of people. Do I have a purpose in this team? Where do I fit? Am I listened to? Am I heard? Once again, do I belong, and am I trusted?
Wow, thanks. And I bolded significance there because there's some of the research, and one of the books that I'll mention on the next slide it basically says that certainty, autonomy, relatedness, equity, we feel those as, and they all contribute to significance and to how I feel, how important do I feel in the eyes of the people around me, and most particularly in the eyes of my direct supervisor, who has a kind of a stronger than average influence over my work experience, my work life.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And so what happens here, sorry, I'll probably just to bring that back. So what happens here and how it connects to psychological safety is when you understand where you're triggered in this, or where your team members are triggered, or in any conversation with anyone, your family members, your colleagues, your friends, you can see very quickly where they're triggered. This automatically starts to set off internal mechanisms that start to disengage you. So engagement's the outcome of your interactions. Psychological safety, it's driven by your threat and reward responses in these domains.
Great, fantastic. And speaking of equity and fairness, I want to be fair to engagement. So we started off with showing a bunch of research about engagement, and I want to just give you just a summary of some of the key research about psychological safety. And so you can go and take a look at it yourself. Kahn in 1990, we've talked about this already, saying that psych safety is foundational for engagement. Remember, if you want to get a list of these documents, just type the word research into the chat and we'll find you, and we'll send you the links. Edmondson in 1999, a 37-page research paper just saying psych safety is absolutely necessary for team learning and performance. If you don't have psych safety, the team can't learn. If the team can't learn, can't get better at what it's doing, and therefore you can't increase performance. In Aristotle Project, New York Times actually had a long article on this. Google had spent 3 years looking at 180 teams and trying to figure out, they looked at 250 specific elements, trying to figure out what makes teams perform better. And at the end of 3 years and 180 teams and winnowing, I mean, they're data people, and winnowing these 250 items down, their conclusion was that psych safety, more than any other factor, is responsible for team performance. Snyder, this is the book that I've talked about. If you can get your hands on this, it's an absolutely fantastic book. Chapter 2, which is quite long, actually, but detail will take you through all of the things that Karen and I have just been talked about in the last one slide. So Robert Snyder. Yeah, Robert Snyder, got the book right here. And no, you can't have my copy. And the title of the book, Social Cognitive Neuroscience of Leading Organizational Change. This book is profoundly important, in particular in today's, in this year, because 2021 is a year of transformation for every single organization. There is no sense of, there's no way we're going back to whatever the old normal was. We now have to reinvent everything, and the way we look at the workplace, the way the workplace is going to work is going to change profoundly. And as we go through change, the more psychologically safe our team members are and our staff are, the more able, and our management as well, the better able they are to contribute to the change, to support the change, and to be able to kind of bend and weave with the change. As you have lower psychological safety, you end up with people who are resistant, not resilient, and change will just stop. And so I think a lot of organizations, as they go through 2021, they're going to come right smack dab into this sense of resistance because we are extraordinarily fatigued. I don't think there's anybody that I've spoken with in the last 6 months that it does not feel this sense of enormous fatigue. It's a number one topic of conversation. That's why we're here.
I think, Alex,
yeah, go.
Sorry, just the you touched on it, for leaders to feel psychologically safe. I think this is absolutely critical, and we're seeing it all the time in the data. So we know it's absolutely critical, but they are the ones who feel the least psychologically safe. They're too scared to be vulnerable. They're too scared to make a mistake. They're too scared to make a misstep. Yet they don't really understand what their people need. They need more support than ever if they're going to really help to address this and make the change.
For sure. And they have crushing expectations over the last year and continuing on. The last paper I'll reference here is one that just came out in July of 2020 by Kim and partners, and basically saying psychological safety is the engine of performance. So with that said, Lou, I just want to make sure that there's anything in the chat that we should be aware that you're.
No, a lot of people are asking about the research, so that's fantastic. What we'll do is we'll make sure that it gets sent out. We'll put it in the LinkedIn event page, and then we'll also send it out to everybody after the event.
Yeah, that's fantastic. There's some great reading there. There's some long, dry, and intensely boring reading, but read the introduction, read the conclusion. There's the shortcut for you. But there's some great stuff in there, and some of these papers actually just connect the dots, and that's exactly what we're going to do in this next slide, which is how does psychological safety impact performance? Is there a direct line? Well, let's start off with psychological safety over here. And let's imagine that we can increase psychological safety. And as we increase psychological safety to a certain point, as the fundamental definition of it says, it now allows us the ability to communicate. we can actually speak up and speak up. Below a certain threshold, we will not. We will sit back and we will sit on our hands. We will not engage in the conversation, regardless of what might happen. And that was a part of the original Dr. Edmondson's original paper, which was that, medical people in a hospital, knowing that a mistake is being made that is likely to cause catastrophic consequences for a patient, feeling so psychologically unsafe that they would not speak up. They would not speak out, and thus having damage occur to or death occur to a particular patient. So let's imagine that we can psychological safety, we know, it enables us to speak up and speak out, so we can communicate. Well, when I can communicate, I can collaborate. So now I'm actually able to work in a team, work alongside my teammates, and back and forth. Now we're starting to be able to collaborate and start to learn. And when we start to learn, it means we can start to get better at what we're doing. And out of that collaboration, if psych safety keeps increasing, my creativity starts to, I now feel free and relaxed and comfortable that I can make suggestions about a little idea, about a big idea, and out of this creativity emerges the things that are fundamentally important to every single organization in today's modern work world. Innovation, whether it be innovation of brand new products and services, or deep changes, or small changes, or problem solving, whether it's amongst ourselves, or maybe I'm on the phone to a customer or a supplier, and we're just going to riff back and forth to try to figure out how to solve whatever this issue is. And then to unearth opportunities. We know that these three things are the fundamental drivers of organizational performance. And so, does this make sense? Is this kind of continuing from psych safety to organizational performance? Does that make sense? Again, use the chat and let us know. And Lou, if there's any comments in there, just holler them out. Yeah. I'll keep going. So view of the organization. What I want to do is I want to just compare how the views of the organization from engagement and psych safety are different, but also, at the very beginning, we thought, well, it's engagement versus psychological safety, but no, psychological safety, just adds a deep additional perspective. It adds color, if you will, literally, as you'll see, adds color to our sense of the organization. So if we're looking at the organization from the viewpoint of engagement, we're going to see an individual. We are going to hire that individual, train an individual, we remunerate an individual, we motivate, we promote, we terminate all individuals. And even when we have multiple people that are working together, we still hire and train and view all these people as individuals. Very little thought given to the interplay between them. The same thing with leaders. Leaders, there's another individual that is now given a title and opportunity to work with and guide and direct the individuals in his or her care. When we have a customer coming in, then that customer is going to be met with and dealt with by one of our individuals. And the interaction with that customer, the way we view it through just engagement and this individual perspective, the success or failure of the engagement with that customer is solely dependent on the individual's skills and training and motivation and enthusiasm. And so if that customer interaction doesn't go well, then guess what? We look at the individual and we want the individual to get better at what they're doing. Let's now take another look at the same organization, but this time through the lens of psychological safety. So we start off with an individual, of course, and then we add teammates. But now we know that there is something else going on here. There's this social context. And that has something that we've never been able to see before, but we now know is very much in spades. We know that our sense of psychological safety is contagious. It moves back and forth. I'm feeling a little lower, it's going to pull my team. If I'm feeling stressed, if I'm feeling unhappy, if I'm feeling uncertain, all those things will actually pull the overall psychological safety of the team down. We see this in our research every single week. Then we add a leader. Well, we already know that a leader has a big influence on how the team looks and feels and operates. You know that from your time in high school, right? Some teachers, same group of kids, Some teachers could make a classroom just go by like that because you're feeling excited and enthusiastic, and you're learning from in a completely different way than boring, drawn out, or even worse, kind of hostile lectures the clock just slowed right down, and you just didn't learn. You just didn't want to learn, didn't want to be there. Now imagine that we've got these social interactions, and we now have a customer come in. Well, we know that there's a little micro social interaction going on between the customer and this employee, but you can see that that employee is still affected very much by the social interactions, by the people in their team, and by their leader. And we know this is true. We know, for example, that if I've just come onto my shift, I'm working in a retail store, for example, I come onto my shift and my team leader and my teammates say, "Hey, Alex, great to see you. Oh, you look great today, and get out there and have a good time. You did fantastic yesterday." And we just get out there and do that again. That sense of acceptance and encouragement, I'm going to walk out there knowing that my team has got my back, and I'm going to meet that customer in a certain way with, enthusiasm and confidence. If, however, I come in and I get, no comments, or I get, you know what, you could have done a whole lot better yesterday, or your shoe's untied, or your hair is a mess, or whatever, I'm going to walk out on the shop floor with a completely different sense. It has nothing to do with my skills and my training and who I am innately, right, as an individual. So tomorrow, here's some homework for you. Tomorrow or today, depending on what time it is in your time zone, as you walk through your place of business, or if you're not walking through it yet, if you're still doing it virtually, take a look and try to understand, see the social domains, the social context that's out there. Try to look at the people on your teams and around you through the lens of these social connections, and see what you see. It's a completely different way of looking at things, and I think you'll pick up some things. And then out of that, of course, we see all these KPIs, key performance indicators, or metrics, or OKRs. Choose your word, but all these things come out of it. We see the literature tells us that these things are impacted by psych safety. We see it again every day in the work that we do in a variety of different organizations. We just talked very briefly about that customer satisfaction. The customer coming into the having a great social context engagement with or interaction with the staff, that then leads them to making a purchase decision that then impacts close rates, average transaction value, items per sale, all these KPIs that are so important to revenue in a sales-based organization, and then contributing to lifetime value. Those things, again, if you go back a few slides, organizational performance over here, you can just see it come all the way back to the psych safety of the individuals. So now that we know that it's well defined and that it relates, how do we improve it? And well, we've been able to categorize, and the literature supports this, categorizes performance in teams and in organizations. You can see specific ways of dealing with things. So level C, kind of the lowest level of psychological safety, is teams where there's low trust, both amongst their teammates and of the organization itself. They're self-protective. They just come in kind of like this. You just want to get through the day. They work only as directed, do this, do that, and then I'm going home. And they work very much as individuals. What we need to do in teams like this is we need to simply build their safety. And that's why the work that Karen had talked about with the 5 social domains gives us key insights into what might be going on inside this team, and then how then we can build that up. Level B teams, as we build safety, you start to get into a level B situation where there's growing trust, both in my teammates and also in the organization itself. People are less protective about themselves, but they're actually more protective about each other. You'll start to see them looking out for each other. And this is important in high danger jobs, like mining, for example, where you've got safety incidents. You can actually see safety incidents drop as teams feel more psychologically safe. They need some support and direction, but it doesn't need to be so specific. They're actually happy to work in teams. We need to work and we need to continue to build their collaboration, keep making them feel safe. Let's start to build their collaboration, support that. We can start to hold them accountable to some of the performance, some of the expectations that we have on them. In fact, we must do that. Whereas in level C teams, there's no point in trying to hold them accountable to any kind of performance. They are unable to perform. They're brittle. They'll break if you put any more pressure on them. And finally, if you keep working with these teams, you can actually get to level A teams, high degrees of trust in each other, in the organization, spontaneous creativity. You don't need to tell them what to do. Just say, hey, here's a particular goal. They'll figure out how to do it, and they'll do it really, really well. Self-directing. They're working as a unified team, not as a group of individuals. And so you can actually start to throw challenges at them, and they want challenges. So given these three definitions, I think, Lou, you've got a poll we can put up. So just go and get that going right now. So get ready on your keyboards. Here comes the poll. There it is. How would you rate your current team or organization? Level A, level B, or level C?
And just a quick note, these polls are anonymous. So for anybody voting, please feel free to give us the most honest answer.
Good one. Wow. Okay. So you can see the results coming in with 2/3 of the voting in. Oh, that's great. That's about what we expect. I think, let's take another 10 seconds, Lou, and then let's take that down and in the interest of time. So another 10 seconds, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
There's a couple trickling in. Okay.
1. Okay, go.
That's it.
Yeah, and let's show the results, Lou. Fantastic. Wow. So almost a perfect bell-shaped curve with 22% saying that they're working at level A, which is extraordinary. If your team, if your organization is working at a level A team, then kudos to you. You're doing a fantastic job. 54% saying, yeah, in that middle section, still room to move. We're okay. We're okay. There's room for improvement. And then fully a quarter of organizations saying that, or people saying that their organizations are working at a level C, psychologically unsafe place, either their organization or as a team. We see that.
One interesting thing from Sven says, I work for 2 companies. One is level A and the other is level C.
Wow. Isn't that amazing? And how I bet you, Sven, as you move back and forth, you probably feel differently and you probably act differently as you're inside each of those organizations. There's some literature that talks to that as well. All right. Well, listen, thanks for doing that. Absolutely no surprise. I need to be able to take that off my screen. I can't do it. All right. I'm just going to keep going. No surprise, we see that in the work that we do is that even in organizations that are at level B and level A, there are people who are down feeling level C, and vice versa. Organizations that have got level C and level B, you will see people who are operating or trying to operate at level A, which is awesome. Okay, let me keep going. So I want to connect this back to performance. And so now we've got this sense of psych safety, and now we have a sense that we can kind of improve it. Let's get performance in there. So let's take this x-axis, which has got psych safety, and let's add this y-axis of performance using any kind of KPI you might care to mention. And then let's put our team there. Here's a team who's feeling kind of, not kind of, low psych safety and not performing as well as maybe some of the other teams. So this is what we expect to see as you start to move teams through the continuum from C to A, is that at the very beginning, you're really going to be focusing on just psych safety. Let's work on safety. You might see some improvement in performance, but where it really starts to kick off is once people feel safe about coming into work. And then you'll start to see some very rapid increases in performance as that collaboration takes hold and strengthens, and as we're now able to start to hold people accountable to performance without crushing them. And then as they cross over this threshold into level A teams, which are, again, 22% of teams are out there reported like this, you start to see the creativity and the performance start to unlock in ways that are unpredictable because it's creativity. So this is how we expect to see teams move. That's what all this work does. So remember our CEO? We started talking about the CEO back 47 minutes ago. What we want to do now is we want to get back into a session with the CEO. What would we need to do? What would we have to put in front of that CEO in order to be able to have a good conversation about investing more in people? So let's imagine that we could do something like this. We could, first of all, talk about how our people are feeling. So we know that already. We know how to do that. And let's get that x-axis up. We want to also be able to figure out how our people are performing. So if we've got those two measures, we can take our teams and we can scatter our teams across that chart, and we can see some are higher, some are lower. And if we have this, we can actually do some statistical correlation, and we can see whether how people are feeling and how teams are feeling and how teams are performing, whether they're actually correlating. In other words, when you take a look at teams and it's got higher psychological safety, are you more or less likely to see the performance higher than that? Now, this is where engagement has really dropped the ball. It's very, very difficult to do this unless you have massive studies. 2016, Gallup did one on engagement, 1.8 million people, 250 organizations, and you did a lot of incredibly difficult calculations and we're able to say, yeah, if you squint a little bit and look at it this way, you can actually see that engagement will drive performance across the world. But that's not of any use to me as a CEO when I'm trying to make decisions in my particular organization, is it? And so that's what we're able to, that's, if we can do this kind of correlation, it really strengthens our ability to make decisions. We also know that we've got level C, B, and A teams. We know we can move them through that. One last thing missing, and that is there a sense of financial impact? And so what if we could do this? What if we could rate the size of the team by the financial potential that was enabled? If we could get that performance up, how much more would that contribute on a financial basis? What if we could do this? We would now have something that was well-defined, measurable, impacts performance, because we've done the correlations. It can be influenced. We know we can move teams from C to B to A, and now can be discussed in financial terms. And therefore, you'd have a CEO saying, I love the ROI we're getting from our engagement. I love the ROI we're getting from our psychologically safety-related investments. We should significantly increase the budget. Now, imagine we could do this. In fact, let me take my magic wand. I'm a conductor, so every conductor has a little wand. If I wave my magic wand and do this, we're actually able to see that this is a real live chart from Conductor software, where you can see at the bottom we've rated psychological safety. There's one question, an autonomy question. It actually correlates. You can see the green line. It correlates to the KPI that's on the left-hand side there, which was sales conversion. You can see the 70 teams scattered across this, and you can see the opportunity based on the size of the chart. So this is very difficult to do. This is why a lot of people don't do it. You either don't have the right measurement tool, or the number of calculations in order to do this, it's difficult. This automatically happens inside Conductor. So I'll just leave that there for a sec. Before we finish it up, sorry, Karen, were you?
Yeah, I was just going to mention in that Gallup report, they themselves said if we want to move the radar on performance, organizations actually need to be tracking what's happening with their people against their KPIs. But you can't do that with engagement surveys because it's measuring individual and all sorts of different things that get in the way of that. So that really sits at the heart of why we started Conductor, was to do something about this, to do something meaningful so professionals consultants, organizations could actually really start to move the needle and understand what to do at every point along the way. But it has to be linked with the KPIs. Otherwise, we can see down in this quadrant, the blue team, really good psychological safety, happy people, but they're not performing. They're not performing for the organization. They're not getting even mid-level KPIs. They're just happy teams.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good. Thanks for that. Now we're going to start to wrap it up here, and as Lou said at the beginning, we're happy to stick around and answer any and all questions, even if it goes long beyond the 1 hour. And we'll give you some contact information in just a minute. But just to wrap it all up, I think Karen started us off with this slide. On this slide, this is what we want. This is our vision. We want every person in every organization to feel safe and productive at work. And this is what we do. We help leaders do that by delivering better insights and recommendations. And just the reason that we chose the name conductor, and I think we really like this, because a conductor supports every person in an ensemble to play their best together. That's a great definition. These are the things that we do. We can help you with, first of all, a Ps25 survey. You heard me say earlier that another organization that I'm working with did an engagement survey that took 2 hours for their staff to complete. The Ps25 survey, PS stands for psychological safety. It's 25 questions. It takes on average 3 minutes and 40 seconds to complete. It's very precise and allows us to take a look at the 5 social domains and some leadership stuff. Very interesting. That can then feed into a complete conductor audit, and you can see very small there, but you get a sense that we can take a look at not only the psych safety, how it's distributed across the organization. The next one is taking a look at the psych safety inside all of the locations and ranking those. But then we also get into doing internal benchmarking. Can take the KPIs in your organization. We can rank them. That's the next little blue chart. And then we can start to figure out risk and opportunity and in a financial basis. So that's that next chart. So that particular chart shows something like $20 or $30 million worth of psychologically safe related potential opportunity and risk. And then you've seen the bubble chart and how that works. And there's a bunch more. So these are the types of things that you can get out of a conductor audit. As well, we offer curriculum and accreditation programs for people who are actually inside an organization or for consultants who are working with a variety of clients. And we'll take you through all of the work that we've talked about here so that you can, you've got all the research, you've got all the skills to be able to not only do the audit and to understand and diagnose, but then to also be able to start to improve, move the teams up that continuum from C to B to A. And then if you need help, we have an accredited professional network, people who have gone through all of this and work closely with us. And they are they're all over the world right now. I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 countries, from Europe to North America to New Zealand and Australia. All right, that's what we do. Thanks very much. Remember, put the word research into chat if you want research. Next webinar, April 7th and 8th. Circle that in your calendar, same time as this one. If you want to reach out to us and talk further one-on-one about your own particular situation in your own organization, just go to conductorsoftware.com, and there's a big button at the top, book a meeting, and you can pick whatever hemisphere you're in, and we'd love to chat with you. And then if you want to send us an email, there's our email address. Lewis, have I missed anything?
No, I don't believe you have. There's a question. Karen mentioned engagement surveys. Should we assume the upshot of this is that the Ps25 survey asks fundamentally different questions to support KPIs and relevant information?
So the Ps25 is fundamentally different, and back to those social domains, because it's been designed around to really get down to what are the threat and reward triggers that are happening in those teams. I did notice earlier Anthony was referring to how, psychological safety, the next step after engagement. It's exactly what we're saying. If we're going to keep, there's no point measuring engagement any longer because it's not really driving performance, but it's psychological safety that drives engagement. So we now, neuroscience has opened up this field and allow us to really understand it from this context, and the Ps25 actually taps into that. So as Alex said, it only takes 3 minutes and 40 seconds. It's incredibly nuanced. And often people may comment that I didn't really understand what you were trying to ask, because we're not really trying to get them to judge something. So we're asking them how often things happen. So we don't want them to judge what's happening in their environment. How often are they experiencing it? And so this just feeds itself into helping us to identify what are the risks and opportunities that are sitting in your organization. And those risks are compliant risks, they're brand and reputational risks, they're legal risks, they're financial risks, they're risks of people leaving, knowledge walking out your door. We can see that just by understanding where these threat and reward triggers sit.
Beauty. Thanks, Karen. Any other questions out there, Lou? And I'm keeping an eye on the clock. This endeth the presentation, the formal side of it. So if we know you've got other things to do. If you need to get onto those, fair enough. And if you want to stick around, we're happy to stick around for another half an hour, and talk with all and sundry if you've got particular questions. But thank you all for setting aside an hour this morning or this evening, wherever you happen to be. It's great to have had you all here, and we look forward to the conversations that we're going to have with you one-on-one and in our next webinar in 4 weeks.
Oh, one more quick question is your target audience, and should ours as consultants be HR or other line functions such as C-suite, VPs, et cetera?
Yeah, that's a great question. Certainly, what we find is that the heads of people, heads of HR, they're tasked with this, and they're oftentimes really glad to be able to have another tool that they can use inside their organization. It also allows them to have different types of discussions inside their organization with not only their peers, head of operations, head of retail, head of sales, et cetera. It allows them to engage with them in a different way. Oftentimes we will see people who are the head of a particular operation, sales teams, for example. Every single sale ultimately arises out of social context. And so sales teams, head of sales are good people to talk to. Sometimes you have CEOs who are just saying, we need to do things differently. We want to do things differently. I've always wanted to really make solid investments in our people. This gives me the cover to be able to do that, knowing that it will also drive up the financial performance in the organization. So start the conversations, where you can, just as we're doing now, and let the conversations lead you in the organization. It's an easy conversation to have.
I think also what we've seen, Alex, is a lot of organizations and leaders, particularly at the moment, are very mindful of where they're spending money and the results. They want to know that they are getting results. They're no longer willing to invest in people-related initiatives that aren't driving performance because they need their businesses to start prospering. So this is actually a really good conversation because you have transparency, they have transparency on how leadership all the way down through the organization is doing, how they're thriving, where their challenges are, what support do they need, what additional training do they need, what are they not able to do. Leadership hasn't for very long focused on people. It's focused on how to run businesses. And at the moment, we know we actually have to engage the people to bring them along.
Yeah, absolutely. Louis, what else are you seeing in the chat? Any other questions that?
No, there's not too many questions. A lot of people are asking for the research. Roger, thank you for showing up. So Jeff Wade says, I've had executives say I have no budget, but this tool shows me where best to invest and what I do have for the biggest impact.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And so, Jeff, that's a great insight. Is that oftentimes, the tool itself is not that expensive, and so you can do a pilot somewhere. Do a pilot across. If you've got an organization that's got however many people, do a pilot across 10% of the population and see what it shows. We've never ever have we ever not seen real things to talk about, real things inside an organization, and new conversations to have that are related to people and also related to performance. So that's a great way of doing this.
There's a question in the Q&A, just to address that one.
Sure.
Is there an appetite in corporation to use tech, example, cortisol heart rates, to measure mental health and well-being instead of a tool like Ps25? I would say we haven't come across that. But the issue that I would find with that is, okay, so you're measuring cortisol and heart rates, but you have nothing to link it to. You're once again just making assumptions to understand what's really happening for that person. And, is their well-being or their stress, their anxiety linked to what? To the phone call they were just on with their client, or because they just stepped out of a board meeting, or they just had an altercation with a colleague, or their project is falling behind. It has nothing to link to what would you do to support that person. So,
how would you take their cortisol levels?
Blood.
Oh, okay.
I guess, I don't know, but without knowing, yeah.
Yeah.
I think what the clients we have, the people we have using Conductor and using the Ps25, it's just really quick, easy, non-intrusive.
Yeah.
Doesn't cause a threat response in people, and it gets right down to and addresses the issue at heart.
Yeah.
So for consultants, it's just a really, really quick way to understand your client from the get-go. And we have consultants who now openly state with their clients, if you want to work with me, you first have to do this.
Yeah.
Because it just saves so much time and money on the front end.
Yeah.
And gives, I think, organizations the evidence. They often have a gut feel for issues that might be happening, but they don't really have the evidence. And so often the feedback that we're getting is that, yeah, we had a gut feeling about that. It's just really awesome to see that in the results.
Yeah.